Welcome, I'm Yvonne Davis, and I am an author and astrologer, and I want to welcome you to my channel. I do political astrology and general astrology readings, so if you're new to my channel, I hope that you will subscribe, or if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe. And also, if you like the video, please click like and share with your friends and family and on your social media. And I welcome all comments. So if you want to share your thoughts and feelings, feel free to. I love to read everything that people are posting on my videos. So also, if you would like a personal reading, I do personal readings. So you can check the link. I put it in the box below. And I do 1 hour readings and half-hour readings. Of course, if you want more time than an hour, that's possible too. But those are two options that I have on my website, so you can look into that. Or you can email me at admin@yvonnedavis.com, and that's in the description on my channel. So if you need to, you can go there and look for the email address. So, okay. So yes, this is the Pluto-Saturn conjunction on January 12th, 2020. So we've still got about 7 months, something like that. And so this is a long-term transformation, but I do believe that the new moon in Gemini bringing new information, new ways of thinking of things, especially with that opposition to Jupiter and the square to Neptune, is bringing a long-term transformation that lines up with this conjunction of Pluto and Saturn. So the first thing I want to do is talk about what exactly is this conjunction of Pluto and Saturn bringing, so that you can be thinking about, okay, how can I think about this in new ways? All right, so so the first thing to consider is that we have the nodes in Cancer and Capricorn. So the North Node, when we get to this conjunction, will be at 8 degrees 25 minutes of Cancer, which means that the South Node is on the opposite side at 8 minutes of Capricorn, 8 degrees of Capricorn, 25 minutes over here. Basically, conjunct the ascendant at 6:43 a.m. on the East Coast on January 12th, 2020, which is a Sunday. So I chose this even though Saturn still has 1 more minute to go before it's exact in its conjunction to Pluto. But I chose this time, 6:43 a.m., because Jupiter is on the ascendant, which astrologers consider a positive alignment. So, so again, I want to talk about the nodes in Cancer and Capricorn first, because specifically with the South Node in Capricorn, the South Node removes things. It's about past karma. It's about past patterns, and it's simply about the past, okay? And it's things that we're ready to release. So as the South Node moves through Capricorn, in Capricorn, one of the things it rules is government. Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. Saturn rules authority and structure, and it also is the ruler of government. So with the South Node sweeping through Capricorn, that means it's sweeping out the old. Sweeping out the old patterns, sweeping out the old karma, and I'm going to talk about specifically what I think that means. So recently, the South Node made a conjunction to Pluto, which rules power and wealth, and Saturn, which rules authority and structure. So it's sweeping out the old. It's restructuring power and authority, okay? And we do see that happening in our government. These you might say these weaknesses in our government are being brought into the light for readjustment and restructuring, okay? And I do believe that ultimately this restructuring of power and authority will work in the favor of the people, okay? So keep that in mind. At this point, when we have this conjunction, the nodes are still at 8 degrees, and they move in this direction. So they will move into Gemini, okay, 29 degrees of Gemini. So it has about 8 more degrees to go before it completely sweeps through. And I'm actually more interested in the South Node, which is on the other end, sweeping through Capricorn and sweeping out the old, okay? Sweeping out the old patterns, sweeping out the old karma, and this will help us in a restructuring of government, power, and authority that I believe will work in favor of the people. Okay, so those nodes are very important to keep in mind because I'm going to show you something very interesting. 500 years ago, we had a similar alignment. So I want to show you that real quick here. Let's see. This was a new moon eclipse, December 23rd, 1517. So that was 500 years ago. We have this new moon. The sun-moon conjunction is always a new moon in a very early degree of Capricorn, trining Uranus in an early degree of Taurus. And Uranus in Taurus also brings restructuring. And we also have Saturn moving into conjunction with Pluto. And then the other thing I want you to see here, the North Node has moved into Gemini. So when I showed you the chart before, because I'm going to move ahead again 500 years into the future, which is the time we're living in now, the North Node was 8 degrees of Cancer. So you can see here it moved about 10 degrees. That's a 10-degree difference, but in terms of the transformation that it brought then and that it will bring now, that 8 degrees doesn't matter that much. The North Node will continue to move through Cancer, and the South Node will continue to move through Capricorn until it finishes that sweep, okay? But still, that 8 degrees, even though it hasn't quite completed its pass yet, it's done enough of its work that the fact that it still has about another 8 degrees to go doesn't really matter that much. So what I'm pointing out is that even though in this chart 500 years ago, the North Node has already finished its sweep through Cancer and Capricorn, it's close enough that the effects that happened 500 years ago and the effects that we will see today in the rest of 2019 and in the rest of 2020, they're close enough that the effects that we can see back then and that we can see today are very similar and comparable. So the question I want to present is, okay, what happened back in late 1517, early 1518? Well, we can see this new moon in the early degrees of Capricorn trining the Uranus and Taurus in early degrees of Taurus, and Saturn moving into a conjunction with Pluto, and the North and South nodes sweeping through Cancer and Capricorn. Okay, so those are the things that were the same. There was a Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. They were the signs in Capricorn were trining Uranus in Taurus, and the nodes had finished their sweep through Cancer and Capricorn. Okay, so there's the 3 things that were the same back then 500 years ago and today. Okay, so again, the question is, well, what happened back there in late 1517 and early 1518? So I am going to really quick, I want to switch over and show you what's happening here. Oh, that's my website, by the way. So if you want to book a reading, I'm just going to throw a little commercial in here. This is where you go. You go to astrology, and I'll put the link in the box below. And like I said, I do personal readings for an hour at 150 and half-hour readings at 75. And I give discounts for my clients who repeat. So if you want to become a repeating client, you can get a discount off of that. Here it is. October 31st, 1517, 500 years ago, the small town monk Martin Luther nailed his theses to the church door. That's what happened. And that is the moment that we call the Reformation. So I'm going to take you back again to the charts. But I want you to hold that in mind, okay? That was a defining moment in the history of human consciousness. And you are one of, let me go actually pull up another interesting thing here I want to show you. The World Population Clock. You're one of almost 8 billion people on this planet. Your thoughts matter. Your thoughts, what you believe, is part of that whole human consciousness. Your thoughts and feelings, all your energy goes into the morphogenic field and becomes part of the collective human consciousness. So what you think and believe matters. What you say matters. You're creating human consciousness in every moment that you exist. That's how powerful you are. And I want you to remember that. With this new moon in Gemini, I want you to remember how powerful you are as part of the collective human consciousness. So, okay, let's go back to the charts. So that's what was happening. And by the way, I also want to be clear about these dates. I pulled up the dates for the charts because I wanted you to see the alignment. But one thing you have to keep in mind is that they used a different calendar back then than we use today. So there may be some slight differences, as much as a few days or even a few weeks. But that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if October 31st and December 23rd are using the exact same charts. They're close enough in time astrologically that that this is the event is in alignment with the what's happening astrologically, because these are more long-term transformational effects. So that's why we can be talking about this as early as June 3rd, or whenever you happen to be watching this video, even though we're not going to see the new moon in Capricorn until, I will bring up that chart, December 26, 2019. So as you can see, that's 502 years. And here we are seeing the same alignments again. We're seeing a new moon in the early degrees of Capricorn, trining Uranus in the early degrees of Taurus. And we're also seeing Saturn moving into conjunction with Pluto in Capricorn. And then again, the third thing I wanted you to see, or maybe we would say the fourth thing I wanted you to see, was the nodes. In this case, the nodes haven't quite finished moving through Cancer, but they only have another 8 degrees to go to finish sweeping through those signs and sweeping out the old and bringing, sweeping out the old patterns, sweeping out the old karma and bringing in the new restructuring of government, power, and authority. So what I want to talk to you about is internal locus of control, okay? And I'm going to be pulling up these charts again as we move toward January 2020, when it's actually a 4-day weekend when all of these planets line up in 20 to 22 degrees. And that will be January 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th. So I'll be showing you these charts again, both the ones for 500 years ago and what happened with the Reformation that was kicked off with these alignments, and what's happening today, because we're having a modern Reformation. We are watching history as it is unfolding. We are living through that history as it is unfolding. This is an incredible time in human history. It is the equivalent of the Reformation 500 years ago. That is what we are watching unfolding, and we are part of that. Remember, you're not a bystander. You're not just sitting out there in the stands watching the game being played. You are a vital participant in this Reformation. You're a vital participant in history unfolding. So I want you to remember that, how powerful you are. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the Gemini new moon. And so I wanted you to think about that on a more personal level and the role that you are playing personally in this greater Reformation. So think about that. Jupiter is the belief systems, and in some ways you could say it's the old belief systems, but it can also lead to new belief systems because Jupiter also rules consciousness expansion. So you can have new expanded ways of thinking, expanding your consciousness. But right now there may be something in opposition, something you're not sure about, something you don't quite believe in, something you don't quite understand, and you need to move toward integration over the next 6 months. So to bring it a little more home, so it's not just something that's happening out there, I really want you to understand how powerful a participant you are in this new modern Reformation, is to think about power. An internal locus of control is your inner power. An external locus of control is outer power. And that's what the Reformation was all about. Because 500 years ago, people had an extraordinary external locus of control. All power was external to them. They had no power internally. The average people, like us, just get up every day, do the work you're called to do, whatever that may be, whatever's in front of you, come home, take care of your family, raise a family, try to live a good life. We're just normal, ordinary people, just like they were. But they had such an external locus of control. They believed all power was external to them. Divine power was external to them. They had no concept of internal divine power, none at all, 500 years ago. And that was part of what Martin Luther was trying to do with this Reformation that he was bringing about. He was trying to help people see that they did have a personal connection to the divine. They had an internal divine power, a connection, a personal connection to the divine, and that their will could be in alignment with divine will, not in an oppressive power over, external power over way, but in an internal way where they were really in alignment with it. They felt it internally. And so this is the shift that was coming about, was shifting from this total external locus of control to understanding that they had an internal power. They had an internal personal connection to the divine, and they had inner power. And then you bring us to the present day, 500 years later, and we live in democracy. It's not perfect, but it sure is better than what they had 500 years ago when they were serfs and they lived in fiefdoms, and the monarchy ruled. By the way, it was in England. It was King Henry VIII, and so they had no inner power. That's what, I'm just really, really trying to bring that home for you. They had no internal concept of power. Everything was external to them. And now, 500 years later, we have an understanding of inner power. We have an understanding that we have a personal inner connection to the divine. You can right now connect to the divine source. Right now. You have that inner power to do that. They didn't have that. They had no concept or understanding of that inner power. None at all. And but the fact that you have an interpersonal connection to divine power, to your higher power and your inner power, and that those can be in alignment is extraordinary. And now we not only have that connection with the divine, where the power is no longer outside of us, it's inside of us. Our connection to the divine is personal and internal, and we feel it. We connect to it immediately, not through a priest, not through the clergy, not through the government, not through the church, not through necessarily these divine texts, but personally. You can sit down right now and connect with divine power because it's internal to you, and you understand that, you know that, and you feel that. And so this is about now, it's not just the interconnection with the divine and shifting from power being external to us, but power being internal to us. So in other words, external means that the church tells you what God's law is, like the Ten Commandments or the Bible. And internal means that you feel it in your own heart and you know what is right in your own heart. That's called ethics. When it's external to you, when it's given to you by an external authority, whether that be God, the church, the Bible, it's external to you, that's called morality, okay? And come back to the screen. Okay, so again, that's an external authority. That's called morality, when it's given to you by an external source. When it's internal to you, when you're personally connected to the divine source, and you feel it and you know what is right in your heart, that's called ethics. So morality and ethics are not the same thing. Morality is given to you by an external authority. Ethics is internal. It's something you've thought about yourself. You've felt it in your heart. You've communed with the divine. And, if you're an atheist, then maybe you don't use the word divine, but you still connect with your heart. And that's what I'm really talking about, is the heart and love. And that's what guides you to know what is right. And that's called ethics, okay? That's the difference between an external locus of control, when power is external to you and it's telling you what is right and wrong, as opposed to an internal locus of control. When you know in your heart, because you're connected to it personally and internally, and you know what is right in your heart, that's called ethics, okay? And so that's one of the major differences between an external locus of control and an internal locus of control. So what's interesting is that sometimes people in positions of authority will try to tell you what's moral and right and good, and they try to impose laws, whether they're religious laws or political laws. And when I use the word political, I mean polis. That was the original word that political came from. The polis was the city, and we are citizens. Okay, and but it's still an external authority trying to tell us what is right and good through morality and through the laws. And some of the states that are trying to pass these draconian anti-abortion laws are an example of that. They are trying to tell us what our morality should be. Okay, and that's a mixture of church and state. That's a mixture of the power of church and state, which is an external authority to us, trying to tell us what to think, feel, believe, and do. That's an external authority. Okay, that's morality. Ironically, people who are moral are not always ethical. They may spout the church and the Bible, but they are not necessarily ethical people. That's a very interesting thing to think about. Okay, so that's one of the first things I wanted you to understand about external authority versus internal authority, and how much things have changed in 500 years. So we can thank Martin Luther for nailing his theses to the church door, because he kicked off the Reformation. And so we can ask ourselves, well, all of us can be Martin Luther. All of us can write a thesis and present it to the world. That's what I'm doing right now. Yvonne Davis, this is my thesis, okay? And I'm sharing it with you. I'm part of the Reformation as much as you who are listening right now are part of the Reformation. You are that powerful. And so we can continue to move toward an internal locus of control and our own personal connection to the divine, that our will is divine will, and that we know in our hearts what is right, and we are ethical people. We don't need an external authority to tell us anymore. We know in our hearts what is right, okay? And we can behave ethically, and we know that and we trust that. Now, we need to move from the power being external, not just in the church and in religion and clergy and spiritual texts, but in the government. In those power and authority structures that are governmental, we need to take that power and bring it into ourselves, okay? So that it's no longer an external locus of control, but it becomes an internal locus of control. And that is called self-governing, okay? And you need to first have the capacity for ethics before you can self-govern, okay? Because if we don't have the capacity for ethics, if our consciousness has not evolved enough that we can behave ethically because we know it's right, we do what's right because we know it's right, that's ethics. If we can't do that, then we cannot self-govern, okay? That is where self-governing starts. It starts with the capacity for ethical behavior. And if you don't have that, when people try to self-govern without the capacity for ethics, what you see is anarchy. Because anarchy is basically might makes right. If you're powerful enough, if you're rich enough, if you're scheming enough, if you're conning enough, if you're cunning enough, if you can make it happen and you can get away with it, you are right. And this philosophy was basically written down by the Marquis de Sade. That's where the word sadism comes from. It comes from the Marquis de Sade. And his last name, by the way, was spelled S-A-D-E. It's French. And his name was pronounced Marquis de Sade. And he was a writer and author of several books. And one in particular that you might find interesting is called Justine, about a young woman who tries to behave ethically in a way that is ethical and just. But there are people out there who are much more cunning, ha 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 ha, and they find a way to work around the laws and they get away with it. And what the Marquis de Sade was saying was that that's what true power is. If you're cunning enough to get away with it, ha ha, then you should do it. And if that means cheating on your taxes and you can get away with it, then you should do it. And if that means committing crimes and you can get away with it, then you should do it. And if that means money laundering and you can get away with it, then you should do it. Because you know what? If you can get away, this is the attitude of the Marquis de Sade. If you can commit a crime and you can get away with it, then you're smart. And that is why self-governing doesn't work if you don't first have the capacity for ethics. It simply won't work. It will completely devolve into anarchy, because only those who have enough power and enough cunning and basically are sociopathic because they have no sense of guilt or shame about the things that they do to other people that hurt other people, then might makes right, and it completely devolves into anarchy. And there's no sense of community anymore. So that's why ethics are absolutely essential to self-governing. You have to have the capacity for ethical behavior before you can self-govern. But I believe that self-governing is the next step. The Reformation brought the capacity for ethics, because prior to the Reformation, all authority in terms of morality came from some external force, whether that was God, the Bible, the church, whatever, the clergy, whatever. Because at that time, the church, the Roman church did rule a large part of Europe. And even where it didn't rule, it still had power, like it had power over the monarchy in England up until Henry VIII broke with the Roman Church. So that's where we've come in 500 years. We have brought that capacity internal. That's called an internal locus of control. We no longer need an external authority to tell us what is right. We have the capacity within us. That's called an internal locus of control. That's what gives us the capacity for ethical behavior, is that we can think about it ourselves and know in our hearts what is right and behave in a way that is ethical. And then the next step is self-governing. To take that external locus of control, which is now in the government, and I'm not saying that we won't still need government structures to help with things that are done on a communal level, like defense, standardization, our highways, our infrastructure, things that need to be done in a collective way for the public welfare, public well-being. And by the way, that's in the opening of the Constitution, and that our government was formed for the public welfare. It's so that we can work together collectively for the collective good, for the community. And yet, it still has an external authority. What we need to do is shift that. So instead of the government being the authority and control and power over us, we're shifting that now. And I believe that that's what the Pluto Saturn conjunction is bringing, that restructuring with the South Node moving through Capricorn, a restructuring of power and authority such that it will work in favor of the people. Then that from here, an external locus of control, a restructuring of power and authority so that the people now have more power internal to them, okay? So just like the spiritual external locus of control shifted to an internal locus of control, the power, authority, and government that is now external will become more internal. So the external locus of control will become an internal locus of control. So that the power and authority will be internal to us the people, and we will be self-governing. So I know that's a lot to take in. And I wanted to do this with the new moon in Gemini because I'm giving you something new to think about that's in the context of what's happening in Capricorn with the Pluto-Saturn conjunction and the South Node moving through Capricorn and that trine to Uranus. It's bringing a restructuring. And ultimately, it is so that we can take that external locus of control into an internal locus of control and become self-governing. So it is going to work in the favor of the people. But remember, the people is you. Okay? It's you, it's me. Each and every one of us are extraordinarily powerful. That power is within us. We have it. It's already there. All we need to do is acknowledge that internal locus of control. And so I want you to think about that with this new moon, okay? So I'm guessing this probably got kind of long because that was fairly complicated to explain. But I hope that this will open up your mind to new ways of thinking about things. And, you know, it's totally in alignment with that new moon and Mercury opposite Jupiter. It may cause you to rethink what you've believed about power and authority and shifting from external locus of control to internal locus of control. So I hope we'll have an ongoing conversation about this. And I know that we will because, like I said, I'm going to be doing more videos about those alignments in Capricorn as we get closer and closer to the end of the year and January 2020. So again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video, share with friends and family on your social media so we can build a community here. And please leave your comments. I have a feeling that people have a lot to say about the subject, and I'm so excited to read your comments. So thanks for sticking with me all the way through to the end of this video. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next one. And I will try to do a full moon with Gemini and Sagittarius in 2 weeks from now. And more of the astrology political videos that I know you guys love. All right, I will talk to you next time. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the new moon.